with the performance to be able to qualify for major events like Western Clash.
Oh, I can see that we're getting into the draft, boys.
Oh, I'm so excited for this.
All right, here we go. Game. What, as soon as someone minimized?
I saw the old tab. I'm like, we lose 404.
All right. Enough of you boys, calm down. It's time. Game number 1 as we have our draft beginning between Team Liquid and Tempo Storm.
And this, to me, is like a very standard opener from Team Liquid. It leaves the draft very open-ended. Like, Cursed Hollow is a map where things like Genji, Abathur, Globals really thrive.
Yeah.
And the Uther first ban is like particularly good against and with the Genji. But more so, because Team Liquid is first pick, the first ban on Uther opens up the draft to where they could first pick Abathur, for example, and they won't get punished by like a Genji Uther. Instead, Genji, when you have an Abathur, you can actually deal with it, especially post-nerf. So I think that's really interesting. And yeah, it actually does end up forcing the Abathur ban.
Yeah, both teams have done their homework here, respecting what works for both of them, to be quite honest. And we just open up with Inubrek as the best compensation for anything that's been taken away so far.
I just think that that is going to be a trend we see from Liquid for a lot of this tournament, just because of the lack of diversity that specifically Blumbly has displayed on the side of Team Liquid. It's not that he doesn't have the capability. We have seen historically him be able to play a large amount of heroes on that frontline role, but it seems like they have kind of zoned him down just to the Anubarak more than just because the objective strength of a noob. Obviously, everyone plays a bit of a noob, but he is so lopsided. It's like 15 games onto the Anubarak, and the next closest is like 5.
I think it's Murid in the next one following up for at least this phase.
Yes.
In this phase of the draft, what I'm really keeping my eye close on, I'd like to see where Tempo... Yeah, exactly. I was going to say, where they prioritize Tassadar. They end up going with the Dahaka instead, and this is interesting because Dahaka doesn't necessarily have the same synergy as a global with the Tassadar as, say, an Illidan would. But what this sort of could mean is later down in the draft, we could see something like... This opener could potentially force a Tracer ban in the second half of the phase from Liquid and lead into something where it could either go into Vala, it could go into Cassia, and there's a lot of options here still for Tempo Storm. I think grabbing the Tassadar is actually really key. I think it's a good opener so far.
I was just going to say, with Team Liquid, if they can see that the Tassadar is already there, the knee-jerk reaction is cool. We go for the Illidan, we get our own pseudo-global, as you already mentioned, but with the Tassadar there, there's always the threat of the Tracer as a sort of direct response to the Illidan, and I'm sure they've done their homework to respect that.
It's just the question is it worth to be able to pick up the Illidan and then considering the ban into the next phase, or is that not an option that Liquid finds themselves wanting to move down to? I do assume that this is going to be an Illidan here.
They're thinking about it.
But no, it's going to be a wild change. Already the Lost Vikings come out.
I figured that might happen quite early.
I thought they would try and wait at least one game out towards the second ban phase. At least see if they could draw some kind of aggro within the draft, but they are very confident here.
Am I crazy? Vikings was picked here, but that's not what I find most interesting. It's the Oriole that I find most interesting here, because Vikings and Oriole have such a good synergy, right? The Vikings allow you to stay grouped, and that's what like favors Oriole as a hero. And the Oriole also functions as a deny pick from Tempo Storm, already showing the Tassadar. So I think this is smart drafting from Liquid. They clearly have a purpose and a plan in this draft, and I think it was a great response. They identify that Tass Oriole Vala as a threat from Tempo, and they take it away.
Didn't they also have a TLV with a Trinity comp
They did, and they ran it on Dragonshire, and they won it in like 5 minutes. It was not 5 minutes. It was a very fast game, though. Essentially 4-man commitment, while the Vikings had the ability to get a lot of the side soak and pressure to the top lane. We know on Dragonshire they pretty much dominate the northern lane.
I mean, admittedly, that game had Blumbia's Tassadar, but there's still the potential for them to kind of wiggle around with a similar composition.
Yeah, and it's not like they busted out against maybe, the lower end teams in the European region. They used that against Expert and were successful in that game. So they have essentially all 3 out of the 3 heroes that they had in that exact same composition. The only 2 remaining would be Acacia and Zarya.
I see a potential trap being set up here with the Vala ban from Tempo Storm. With Tracer being let through, I wouldn't be surprised if Tempo does acquire it, but at the same time, what I was going to say is if Liquid did ban Tracer, like I bet Tempo anticipated, that leaves open Greymane, and Greymane's Cocktail build is already not super favored on this map compared to other maps. Like, from my perspective, I feel like I don't get that much value on it in comparison to, like, Tomb. So I already will find myself favoring Worgen form slightly, but seeing the Vikings, you're able to go Wizened Duelist, and if, with a Tassadar, you are able to stack up and get those Wisdom stacks, you just start to chunk. It's actually like insane. I don't know if that's Tempo's thought process here, and I bet Tempo is slightly shocked that Tracer was left up because Tracer Task is just so hard to deal with. But I mean, Liquid already has some tools. They have the Anubarak, which I think is very good against it. But yeah, I'm really curious to see if they end up going with the Greymane over the Tracer.
I think if Tracer were to come out, I think a lot of people do not enjoy playing against that, especially in the European scene, Skimmy.
Yeah, we already mentioned it before. It's fun to play, but frustrating to go against. They decided to go for the Rhaegar and Arthas in the end, so great controlling elements with both the slowing totem as well as the Hellion Blaster. So full control. They're just going to leave that final carry pick for the amplification by the Tessadar to that last slot.
I feel like this illustrates how patient Tempo Storm is as a team. Being willing to pick Rhaegar in this rotation and leave the sort of Psalm hero wild card, what are we going to see from him as last pick, I think is actually a really cool aspect of this draft. But I'm super curious to see what battery Liquid ends up choosing. They could go with like some of the classics like Oriole, but there is even the threat of a Cho'Gall.
I was going to say that. The whole time I've been trying to, I've been waiting for a moment. I think Cho, would be a screaming pick in this slot. There is very little to deal with it on the side of Tempo, and they've removed a lot of the counters.
And
but
they don't even need to worry about being spread across 3 lanes because they've got Vikings.
It's a good call. The Greymane remainder, though, leaves the opportunity for the Curse Bullet, which is too significant of a threat to the Cho'Gall. Yeah.
See, I'm curious if Tempo Storm being patient with the Arthas Rhaegar rotation, theoretically, Team Liquid doesn't opt in for the Greymane, but it would have been interesting to see if their patience alluded to the Curse Bullet counter to the Cho'Gall. That's not the case. They end up going Zarya Lunara, and that is a very terrifying siege-oriented 4-man. We've seen this sort of trend on Cursed Hollow, and I actually anticipate, I've talked with Cattle a ton. He and I, we live together, we discuss a lot of theory crafting, and when it comes to a team composition like this, it's pretty scary to fight them straight up, so I wonder if Tempo Storm's last pick will be something that can split push, not quite at the same rate that Zarya, Lunara, Oriole can push, but still comparable and stronger in late-game team fights that it would make up for that fact.
This is not dissimilar from what you were alluding to earlier, what Team Liquid had with the composition, obviously just subbing in the Lunara for a Cassio, where Nurok is super comfortable on the Lunara, it being his most played hero in this phase.
Yeah, no, everything about Liquid's drafted was a slight variance, but it makes sense to not commit to the Cassio because the Cassio was responsive in the last game that we saw from them. So sticking with a higher damage output, safer choice overall, and there comes the Greymane at the very end there for Tempo.
It just seemed like the most natural pick. You've got the Arthas, you've got the full collapse squad already, so why not? I mean, it's such a strong pick regardless if you're picking it in the last spot, which seems bizarre to say, but I mean, you're thinking outside the box there with the Worgen build, possibly. I mean, easy stacks against the TLV, but
I think it favors the split push playstyle too. Like, I was slightly talking about it, but I do not expect Tempo Storm to walk into the Zarya, Oriole, Lunara. Like, I expect Tempo's just going to be like, let's see if we can punish Hasselhoff's Vikings, let's punish the other 2 lanes and just kind of get punished in the 1 lane. It's like a 2-for-1 trade, and I don't know. It'll be an interesting balance to see.
It's essentially converting the basic philosophy of if you're on a small map and you're winning the 4-man, you're winning 2 lanes versus the 1. It's just conveniently with these drafts is kind of spread out now towards a larger map like Cursed Hollow.
There was a moment there where I realized that, you know, we were talking about the Team Liquid flexibility, etc. Darkmok is going to be on the Lunara because Zarya has to be played by Nurok in this instance. So even more flexibility coming out once again from Team Liquid.
Yeah, and I'm honestly very I'm struggling to figure out if this is, though it is very a Liquid play, and Tempo got a lot of what they wanted. Both teams kind of were like, you can pick what you want, we'll take what we want, we're going to figure out who is the better team. And my mind naturally said I do think Tempo is slightly favored into this series, that they have grown enough to be able to overcome Liquid, but the playstyle is so hard to deal with if you are not used to a master Vikings player like Hasselhoff's on the other side of the table, that it might be too much for Tempo to be able to recover from.
All right, well, I'm hearing that we are ready to go over to our commentary team, which will be Gilly and Kaldor bringing this one. Guys, you excited for EU versus NA?
Definitely. It's the first time we're getting it at this event, but I guarantee not the last. Are you excited?
Yeah, I definitely am. We had a lot of banter going on already about North America and Europe. And we
expect more.
Exactly, expect that to continue in the series.
All right, well, have fun, guys.
Thanks very much, Kalaris. Now, Kaldor, I know you're friends with Team Liquid, but I think, really, I hope that you have the next series off, because I expect you're going to need to do some consoling after this one.
Yeah, maybe. Like, if Team Liquid has a rough time here, then I'm definitely going to be the first one to pat them on the shoulder. But then, on the other hand, they were pretty confident going into the series. But one thing, as we're talking about NA versus EU, every single team that I have talked to has said if there is a European team that is going to lose the series, then it is going to be the Team Liquid versus Tempo Storm match. So I would not mind having at least 3 maps here.
The longest standing roster of Europe takes on the longest standing of North America here, Team Liquid versus Tempo Storm. And honestly, both of them qualified similarly here. Both of them, it was not an easy road to success in getting to the Western Clash.
Yeah, and you know, now also talking about the draft a little bit, I expect that with the picks that we're seeing for Team Liquid here, Tempo Storm is going to be a little bit lost because they gave the Vikings over to Team Liquid in Europe. That's considered to be a pretty big mistake.
Right, I thought that they would first ban that and not even want to deal with it at all. But you know what? When we talked to Tempo Storm, they said Team Liquid, they either play cheese or they play straightforward. So they, I think, expected this. But here they are in the blue. Tempo Storm and Sam playing Greymane Cawthon on Tassadar, Fury playing the Dihaka, Caterpillar playing Arthas, and June playing Rhaegar.
And to the right side of the map, 4 Germans and a Bulgarian. It is Team Liquid with Norok on Zarya, Dartmok on Lunara. We have Hazovs on the Vikings, of course, Blumby on Anubarak, and Oriel played by Splinter.
As we get things started, Kaldor, it's really cool having Glaurung here to be the analyst of the desk.
It's actually a lot of fun to have a top 4 player in the region here now. But at the same time, I have to say, for me, Glaurung, when I look at him, he's for me the esports leprechaun. But instead of a pot of gold, he brings us knowledge.
That makes sense. It seems like there was a rainbow shining on top of the desk during that analyst segment.
I actually think there's a huge Photoshop opportunity as well.
Well, Team Liquid doing what they do best with their Vikings composition. The analyst desk alluded to it. You've got 2 Vikings in one lane. You have Olaf holding down the fort in the next. And then you have a strong 4-man. And with Zarya, Nurok already building up that energy right from the start, they're going to siege so hard here. But Fury grabs a drag to try to put some damage onto Nurok and slow this down.
This is a fantastic setup for Liquid. This is exactly what they want. So they are barreling through the 4-man right now. And with Hazovs, they have one of the best Viking players that we have in the European scene. And they have chosen that hero over and over again, not only on Cursed Hollow, also on Towers of Doom, and you can already see how successful they are in this top lane.
But Kaldor, Tempo Storm are responding beautifully. They keep Fury here, and then in the other 2 lanes, they're pushing with 2 heroes each, and they have it set up in a way that they can put on a lot of damage, already taking out one of the Vikings.
I really like what they're doing. I like that they are currently splitting in a way that they can pressure 2 lanes.
Yeah.
The problem that they are going to have, though, is they will have to react to that top lane. Eventually, Team Liquid is going to knock onto that keep, and then Tempo Storm will have to move back. They can't trade a bottom forward for a keep at the top lane.
No, definitely not, but they put enough damage onto the bottom lane so that they can leave Psalm and Tassadar there, scare away the Vikings long enough, and they do get the fort. So they're going to trade out a fort versus 4 and send people back in time so that hopefully Team Liquid doesn't get too much done, but Team Liquid, they're still going.
Yeah, they will keep going. I mean, they don't know they can get a keep here if they have enough time. And right now, in the mid lane, Tempo Storm keeps Arthas. We are seeing Greymane down to the bot lane. Liquid, it's just going for it. They are saying, we get value. We are willing to take that trade.
Tempo Storm is desperate to continue soaking in every other lane. Now both of the keep towers are down, and that's affording Tempo, or Team Liquid, a nice level, almost advantage as they continue to go forward in experience. A tribute is now been spawned. So far we have a Viking trying to take that. Greymane's going to go up in time and hope to stall out. The fight rages on.
Nice anchor here by Blumby, making sure that as they go for the camp, they see if Tempo Storm moves in. They have to retreat now, but a nice flank as Tempo Storm is starting to move in, trying to get the kill against Splinter in particular, and Oriel goes down.
They go down. They've got the drag on Team Liquid with Blumby too. Nurok caught in a terrible place between all of the members. Tempo Storm taking out 2, and they continue the chase on Blumby.
Tempo Storm 2-0 in kills already here. And Team Liquid, from the beginning, has set to them the first goal, the most important goal. The minimum goal of this tournament is do not lose to North America. It's the one thing where they said this cannot happen. To an extent where they said, no matter what happens here, we cannot lose this. Nurok just told me flat out, if we lose to an A, I'm probably going to start crying.
And Tempo Storm might cry tears of joy, but honestly, I love how much the analyst has talked about the feel of Tempo Storm. They didn't come in and say, our goal is just to be a European team. They were like, no, we can do that. Our goal is top 2 would be cream of the crop. Realistically, we're looking at top 4. They have looked beyond that. They fully believe, they have complete faith that they will take down a European team here.
And you know, one of the reasons why North America actually starts in general to look a bit better now is their biggest problem in the past has been the depth. You only had a few strong teams, so there was very little opportunity to practice and to get good scrim training in, whereas Europe has always thrived when it came to the depth of talent in the region. So now that Tempo Storm has more practice partners, as NA in general just moved together a little bit more, you have more practice, you have more variety, and you have more chances to improve, and this is something that they're already showing in this first game.
Yeah, their improvement throughout Phase 2 was solid, making it to where they did lose to both Galeforce and No Tomorrow one weekend, but now they're trying to delay the tribute, which is on Team Liquid's side of the battleground. They do not get the delay. Team Liquid picks it up.
Liquid with 2 tributes against 0. The Haka moving in from the backline on the other hand, and we have the Howling Blast coming from our side. Blender once again in trouble. It's a double kill! A double kill against Tempo Storm. A 2-for-1, a 3-for-1 as Liquid drops the 3rd target.
Tempo Storm steps too far into oblivion and has lost 4 members, with Team Liquid hoping to make it a clean wipe. Cottonlock has already used his dimensional shift, being slowed down by the poisons of Darklock, accepts the inevitable, just dies so that they don't lose too much in staggered deaths.
It's a 5-man wipe in what was a 4 versus 5 battle. This is the problem. If you fall here, the Vikings are still getting value. I was just about to talk about how Tempo Storm overall does a great job, but Liquid still has those 2 tributes against 0, and that the Vikings of Hazorps are the strongest in the late game, and he has the space on the map when everyone else wants to roam as a 4-man, as a 5-man, and he can get that split push in. This is the worst case scenario for Tempo Storm right now. It couldn't be any worse for them, since they are a level behind, they don't have the Storm talents, and bosses are now also being taken by Liquid.
The nicest thing is that the tribute spawned over away from Team Liquid and where they're getting the boss. So Tempo Storm at least are still going to be able to get that tribute, but Tempo Storm cannot underestimate that strong 4-man that Team Liquid have. They can keep up in fights with 4 versus 5.
Tempo Storm did not identify that Team Liquid was taking that boss. They should have moved to their own boss and cap it. They didn't have level 10, but they needed to make something happen here. Now Liquid has a massive push at the top lane, which is the lane that they pressured at the start of the game, so there's no fort left. The wall is gone at the keep. Team Liquid, 6 minutes into this game, they want to have the keep.
Well, heroic abilities are now here for Tempo Storm, and they're hoping that maybe they can take the fight beyond the boss and go after Team Liquid. Beautiful Howling Blast, but the Expulsion Zone and Cocoon are separating out the members of Tempo Storm. Cattle hanging on to the members, though, of Team Liquid as the Crystal Aegis goes down.
Cattle going in once again. Here comes the Ancestor. Cattle is safe. Great move here. Rega barely keeping him alive. Team Liquid trying to turn it around, but keep in mind, Tempo Storm still has that boss on the keep. They're about to lose the structure here, and they're full retreat right now as Team Liquid is attempting to chase them down.
Blumby, though, has been dragged into the members of Tempo Storm, but the double support of Team Liquid will not be stopped.
Unbelievable. Able to get the shield in. Once again, Blumby trying to turn it around against Cattle, moving in once more. Psalm is already low, and so is June. They are in trouble, but the drag connects. The triple stun on the other hand.
Tempo Storm needs to get back and heal up, calm down for a moment. Yes, they have lost a keep, and they are miles behind Team Liquid.
Curse.
But if they don't get... They have to try to get Team Liquid off of their structures and push them back. This is one last chance.
Hazu channel the tribute with the Vikings. It's a curse against Tempo Storm. They are in so much trouble right now. They lost the keep already. They are 1.5 levels behind. Any second, level 13 talents are going to drop into the hands of Team Liquid as they are moving in. Once again, their double stun. Psalm is down. There's the kill. Arthurs and Greyman both dying, and they go for Fury.
2 kills already. Fury, Cawthon, and June are the only ones left. June in the back of Team Liquid is brought down, and Team Liquid are just fine hanging out in the base of Tempo Storm. They've already taken out 3, and most importantly, Rhaegar's not back for 20 seconds as they move on to core.
8 minutes in, and they're trying to end it. Once again, Vikings and the strong 4-man Team Liquid, they love to play their style, and they are bringing it in as Tempo Storm is losing points in the core, going down to 60%, 50. Tempo trying to defend here, getting the first kill in, but is it going to be enough? The core is already down to 30.
Expulsion Zone keeps Nurok alive, as does the Crystal Aegis. All of the Vikings coming in, the core continuing to fall. We've got 10% in Folly. Team Liquid takes out Tempo Storm in game number 1 in quick fashion.
8 minutes and 20 seconds as Team Liquid takes down Tempo Storm. Tempo in the early game not looking too bad, getting a few kills in, but it was really this one team wipe where everything turned against them. They were hoping for a good team fight, they didn't get it, Liquid wins the battle, and then the Vikings steal the show as the 4-man just continues to push.
I wonder if Tempo Storm really thought that Team Liquid would be so bold as to get the Vikings before second bans, and we're planning on using the second ban spot to take out Vikings. But that composition is what Team Liquid is best at running. They are a completely different team when they run a Vikings 4-man.
It was a smart draft if you think about it, because with the situation that happened, the early ban on Uther forced Tempo Storm in a situation where they had to make a choice. Do we ban the Vikings, which we know that Team Liquid want to get, or do we ban Abathur? And if Vikings are being banned out, Team Liquid is going to jump on Abathur, and that will also give them an amazing position on the map. So it was a bit of a loss for Tempo Storm, I would say. But Vikings in the hands of Hazorps, paired with a strong 4-man, it just showed exactly right there why it is such an important tool for Team Liquid and why we so often in Europe see the Vikings being banned out on Cursed Hollow, on Towers of Doom against them.
Yeah, that's that Hasu experience coming into play that the analyst has talked about. He was an ex-StarCraft pro. Of course he's going to rock at the Vikings. Honestly, I think he's the best Vikings in the world. There's no contest.
If you played Warcraft 3 for a long time and you played StarCraft 2 for as long as he did, controlling 3 heroes is the easiest task for you.
He played very well, and again, just like the Dragonshire game that we saw them play the Vikings with a 4-man, they were able to take out Tempo Storm very quickly. I have to wonder now if that's going to affect the mindset at all, because it was a quick victory, not just a victory, but it did come down to just one fight.
Yep.
But yeah, that is it for us in game number 1. Let's head back to the analyst desk and see what they thought.
Easy peasy Viking squeezy, it seems, here for Team Liquid in game number 1, going up against Tempo Storm. And I'm joined once again, of course, by Skimmy, Dread, and Glaurung to break this down. But there's not a huge amount to break down overall, as the Vikings comp did what the Vikings comp needed to do.
I feel like that game was a statement. Liquid is like, we have played this strategy before. You let us get it, and let's just end the game in under 10 minutes. I feel like Liquid's not here to play. They're here, like,
and you know, I was getting so excited because you are a profound Medivh player, and what is that? That's called the Prophet, and you were the Prophet and calling the Wizard and Duelist, and we never even got to see it have any kind of effect on this game, so I'm quite tilted on that front alone.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like if Tempo were to have executed the comp properly, the talent build they ended up going with was correct.
Yep.
But again, it just comes down to early game execution when you're playing against the Zarya, Oriole, Vikings. It's just so scary and hard to deal with. Your gameplay has to be perfect.
Dread, I don't think Tempo Storm came into this game or this series thinking that that was how game number 1 was going to go.
No, without it, I don't think there's any way, right? When we talked into the interviews, to quote Caterpillar himself, he said they either play straightforward, they draft straightforward, or they draft cheese. That was a composition that we even were able to identify exactly the direction after those first couple of picks where Liquid was going to go. I assume Tempo was in the same boat as ourselves, and they just straight up said, we can get the outplay. So that aspect and dynamic of cheese that they were kind of alluding to before, you have to question if it's cheese, if it's winning, right? And they very much knew that was coming and struggled heavily, and now I think it's going to really affect their approach to draft number 2.
I'm getting word that we do have the replay ready from that game. So, Glau, were you spying on that, etc.?
Yeah, in this team fight, it's actually the thing you really want to pay most attention to is the Oriole here. The fact that Tempo was able to take her out early is key, and this is like one of the moments where Tempo has an advantage, but they can't snowball the advantage the way they want to. Tempo did a very good job of actually punishing, but then they've chased for so long and they just overchase and look to invade their night camp, and that to me just is like such a huge risk. And this play right here, I think it's so hard to recover once this situation happens. You get wiped against the Vikings, and an intense siege copy gives away the boss, and they're just able to secure the keep. And it's just so hard against Oriole Lunara to... You have to, it's a short fight or you lose the game. That's just how it works. Nurok has Feel the Heat, and he's constantly at high energy. And this is a really hard game for Arthas. If the execution is not clean, fast, and perfect, then Tempo, I think, just loses.
I mean, that last double kill that we witnessed there was very exciting, to say the least, because overall, it felt like Nurok had free reign in especially the last 5 or 6 minutes of those fights going on near the core, etc. Dread, that was... a field day, really, for Neurok.
It very much was.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know why we don't even really have to stop at the name Neurok. I think it was just an absolute field day for Liquid.
True.
Yeah, I mean, they legitimately had an absolute heyday.
I was just going to say, he's tweeting out towards his followers saying, look, boys, like 8 minutes in, EU still a bit of an NA.
Lol.
Zeus from NA is tweeting this.
Feels bad, man.
You know, it's actually a bit concerning. No, never mind. I was going to say something of the likes of the fact that Zeus can go all the way over to coach Team Liquid and still be able to take out NA. We're even struggling to be able to choose the right coaches, I guess.
I suppose so. Yeah, it's
On a more serious note, though,
Yeah.
I think from Tempo Storm's perspective, they need a mental reset. They need to say, okay, we maybe disrespected them and their strategy that they've shown before. Let's not make that mistake in game 2. Everything's okay, guys. Let's just move on and see what we can do in the next draft.
Well, the thing is, it's a rough road, right? Because you have 2 lives in this tournament. Yes, admittedly, and that's okay, as we now get the maps coming in. But if you do lose out this 2-0 here and go down the lower bracket, your days are almost numbered from that point on. So Tempo Storm doesn't want to be going out of this top side of the bracket at all.
No, this is without a doubt the series that I feel like is going to set the tone not only for Tempo, but maybe a little bit of North America, and it is not one that they can take lightly. If they are going to outperform what they have done recently, which they expect to, or at least long for into this tournament, they absolutely cannot give this up to Liquid. I think it is very much the first step to them being able to fulfill and, again, reap the rewards of their efforts.
Tomb of the Spider Queen next.
No surprise.
Good map for Team Liquid.
Good map for Tempo, too, I'd say.
Yeah,
it is.
One thing about this map that they've shown in the past, like, again, we always like to highlight Psalm when it comes back to Tempo Storm, but on this map he has a few power picks, right? He has the Kael'thas, he has the Alarak, he has a number of other picks. He's obviously strong at Greymane, but lately they've been favoring Coffin on Greymane over Psalm. But I think this is going to be, like, I wouldn't have asked for a better map for game 2.
I agree. I think it's going to be one of the coolest maps when looking at this series, and now we brought Tempo to their kind of home turf, if you will. We're going to be able to see Liquid with a bit more of theirs. But after how that first game went and the lack of respect Tempo displayed, I am suddenly feeling very concerned for North America, or at least Tempo Storm.
I mean, exactly, just to follow up that point, it's just like, how do you recover from game 1 if you're tilted after 8 minutes? I mean, the one thing you don't have to worry about is TLV is nowhere near viable on this map, right? So there's no fear of an 8-minute game being the case on this one. I mean, the objective is a lot less, I'd say, impactful compared to the Curse. So the game should last a little bit longer in that regard. But as you already mentioned, Glaurung, I say the likes of Discord Strike from the combo, it's a lot of front-loaded damage. And if they can get the control of the Spider hand in, then they can dictate the pace of the game.
One other thing, too, I mentioned Psalm's Alarak. Darkmok plays an incredible Alarak, too. I don't know if that's something that they favor in the meta. It's something that is a little bit more personal for some of the NA teams. I know Psalm has always loved that hero, and I wouldn't be surprised if we were to see that as a later pick in the draft. But even though Game 1 was so decisive by Team Liquid, one thing I would like to take notice of, Fury in particular, this is his first game on land since the role swap, and I'd like to take note, he actually looked really well. The drags he was hitting, he was confident. As long as the overall team composition is like workable through Tempo, they don't require perfect execution. I actually am very excited to watch Fury in this upcoming game because he was on point in game 1.
And that seemed to be the big thing that I took away from that game as well. We saw from especially the second highlight that really sort of brought it home clearly for me was they had the good angles, they had the good collapse with the Howling Blast and then Dahaka in the backline. They just lacked the damage to actually execute when they're all clumped together. The Orioles just got easy heals, easy energy, and it was just a fight that ended up working out easily.
That's double tank Tassadar for you, though. The struggles of double tank Tassadar when you're against such a heavy sustained style composition, and they actually, even though they have Rhaegar Tassadar, they don't have the option to out-sustain the Zarya Oriole, so they're forced to play a playstyle where they need to execute a one-shot, and the only hero that can really do that well off of CC is Greymane with Curse Bullet, and Curse Bullet's a great tool to one-shot, but sometimes you need that extra damage, be it a Genji like we saw from Fnatic earlier today,
yep,
or a Li Ming or a Chromie, which could show up on this map. It's just,
yeah,
I think Liquid responded to Tempo's opener super well. I really don't like the Dahaka Tassadar on Cursed Hollow from Tempo. If you're going to go with the Tassadar and Illidan already with a Tassadar as a winning matchup as a global, I just don't like the Dahaka pick because it enables Liquid to go with the hyper-sustained composition. You're already showing double tank Tassadar. You can't go solo tank Dahaka realistically. I think that was like huge heads-up drafting from Liquid, and whoever's the brains behind that, like mad props.
I'm going to say probably Asu up for first bet.
Probably
I don't think
Asu.
so. I actually, I know Splendor used to do some of the drafting in the past. I actually don't know the current state of who is the mastermind behind
I
Team
think it
Liquid.
probably all comes together, actually.
Probably.
I mean, you're right. Splendor was definitely a driving force for a long time. But coming into Tomb of the Spider Queen, what are you anticipating? Like, are you anticipating any particular picks, Dread?
I think a bit maybe higher priority into the Ariel, just because she can work in multiple different strategies on this map specifically, and she suddenly can gain a lot more with those early game pressure onto front walls, which directly accents, you know, the map objective and how you can manipulate the map like Tomb of the Spider Queen. But there aren't any huge ones. Both teams have a couple here and there that they're comfortable, maybe tier 3s to show up once in a while, but there's no major outlier that I'm looking for in this one, like maybe the Illidan Abathurs of the last game.
And Illidan, obviously, if he does kind of make his way in, because he has the hunt, the map is not very big for him to just be able to say, I can go anywhere, actually. Even before level 20, I can actually just go anywhere, which could be quite powerful. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I'd say it's fair to say. And the thing that I want to see most from this game in particular is I want to actually see some fighting. I want to see them brawl. Because that last game, there was a good amount of fighting, but the issue is it's like Team Liquid says, here's our macro-oriented strategy. Show that you know how to counter it. And it's not necessarily like brawling, you know? And I want to see how Tempo Storm and Liquid fare up when it's a bloodbath.
Is that where North America's strengths are going to lay against Europe? Because I think Europe is very well known for, like, for the most part, macro, macro, macro. Is that where North America has to find their strengths? Find the fights, force the fights, bring the fight to Europe?
It's hard for me to view this from the perspective of region versus region. North America, for me, the 3 teams that are representing North America here have vastly different play styles, and I don't necessarily want to say that's Tempo's strong suit. So while I do agree with you, Freedom and GFE might like, well, not so much GFE, but there are some teams in NA that really want to bring the fight and get those kills, but I don't necessarily think that's Tempo's strength in particular unless they get those power picks like the Alarak, or even, it doesn't sound like that aggressive of a pick, but if they're able to secure Stitches for Caterpillar, they end up playing around picks and brawling and like pretty aggro. Like it's actually something to think about.
Just give me what your thoughts coming on to Tomb of the Spider Queen.
Well, I was just really hoping that we didn't have another Zul'jin repeat there because I wasn't ready for another 10 minutes of ranting.
No, absolutely
I mean,
not.
from a standpoint, from a serious standpoint, I think we're going to still see the likes of the ban priorities on Uther, especially. I mean, the Vala Brightwing seem a lot more reactive as opposed to sort of targeted, but you know, Dahaka, he's an interesting one, especially in ANZ. We actually run him a fair bit, especially for the ability to double soak, almost the same as Azul. But in terms of tester, I think it's going to be a highly contested pick. Abathur, I'm not the biggest fan of it on this map personally, but I've seen it find a fair bit of success in the past.
All right, well, I'm just getting word that we're just still trying to solve some issues that the teams are having. So we've got a bit more time here to kind of chat things out.
In game number 1, I was kind of criticizing Blumby's priority over to the Anu Barak, you know, and how often we've seen that through him in phase number 2, whether that be his own choice or they personally feel that he has that kind of power level on Anu Barak. But this is one of the few maps that Liquid is very comfortable venturing over into the world of Stitches. And surprisingly, to no surprise, you know, that's like the origin of maybe the Stitches that we've seen out of the European region. It started on Tomb, and it still continues all the way over through even teams like Liquid.
The Stitches Lunara back in the day, do you remember? It was way too much, I think. It never ended. Never ended.
I actually want to pick your guys' brains for a little bit. Since we've been talking about Blumby, I feel like at the beginning of phase 1, Misfits, they were Misfits at the time, had a very dominant performance, but I always looked at Blumby as one of the weaker players on that team. However, now I look at his gameplay, and he impresses me. I think he's like improved at a very massive rate, and now he's one of the top warriors in Europe. And I don't know, have you guys noticed that sort of trend too?
I mean, back when I commentated HGC for the first 5 weeks, he had the highest death time in all of HGC Europe, I think, for quite a while. But of course, admittedly, that was him almost sacrificing himself for the team's greater good in a lot of that instance. But, you know, there's some tanks that are able to pull that off and then kind of get away. What are your thoughts on it, Dread?
I would say that he has definitely made some positive growth recently. And I have a hard time looking at Blumby in kind of maybe a smidge of a microscope only HGC. I'm thinking in his entire career when I look at it, there is a lot of rising and a lot of falling at certain moments. And they do seem to be a little bit more long-winded than your traditional player, which is for better or for worse, right? Because it means maybe there's a bit more of a lull for longer periods of time. But when he's at his high, it seems to have a larger duration than the average player. But I do think he is, without a doubt, on an upward trend. Maybe, you know, part of the bull market here for himself.
There was a time and place when I saw Blumby and he'd be on Diablo and I'd just be like, wow, they've just won straight away. And it tended to be on maps like Infernal Shrines, but Infernal Shrines in its essence is quite similar, I suppose, to 2-Minute Spider Queen, where you've got plenty of choke spots for the Shadow Charge to find value, be it the stun or just to get the lockdown. But I mean, just looking at the stats leading into it, they lost once, went, that's it, we're not playing that ever again. Back to an Urbrak, boys. Stick with the Spider-Man plays.
Building on your point about Diablo, the globes on Tomb of the Spider Queen, there's high accessibility to the globes, and Devil's Due is like one of the most insane level 1 talents, if you ask me.
Right.
So I don't know if we'll see Diablo in this draft, but it definitely is a map that makes him more viable because of that fact. And I agree with you, Blumby is like very strong on that hero. And to sort of build off what you said, I thought it was pretty amusing, Kairos, how he would like make the sacrifice for his teammate. When you brought that up, I actually was like thinking, Blumby is one of the most honorable teammates when you think about it. If he's willing, because I mean, sometimes I'm not willing to make that trade, I'll be honest.
No.
But when he's willing to sacrifice himself for the greater good of his teammate, I find that respectable. And you know, KDA is not everything. Sometimes when you look at the tank role, tanks with the lower KDA, you can be like, okay, this guy's got some honor.
Right. Unless you were June at mid-season brawl after a series where he almost, was it him who almost died at the end and he was like, no, my KDA.
Yeah.
That was brilliant. Great stuff.
That's just classic June, though.
Yeah.
Like, June's just like, in the end, he doesn't care about his KDA, but he likes to joke around in that way. And yeah.
They're a bunch of good guys, I'm still getting word that we still are trying to fix the technical issues as quickly as possible. So thank you very much for your patience out there, guys. And whilst we're just kind of chatting here between ourselves, make sure to get involved, as you know, there's been this great initiative coming along from HGC, as you can cheer for your favorite teams. All you have to do is basically link your Battle.net account, Blizzard account with your Twitch account, and then you're able to buy yourself bits and cheer for your favorite teams in the chat. We've already cheered so much. The Heroes community has come out in force, and I really wanted to cheer, and then Amazon told me I couldn't because of suspicious activity, because I'm in the Ukraine and not at home. I tried to buy 10,000 bits and it didn't work, boys.
I did my best too, but you know, I bought everybody's a spray so I can, you know, go around throwing it down up in the ground. But you know, I had a hard time purchasing World 20s. You know, knowing that Galarn was going to be here, something about it made me hold back. I was just, I don't know if I can get this kind of support for my buddy up here. So I'm sorry, Galarn. I'm yet to obtain my spray for World 20.
I mean, the biggest spray that really is MIA for me would be the Nomia one. So you know, if you do want to spread some cheers, then you know, at me. Either at the Nomia boys or myself, and you know, I'll make sure that gets lost in the post office.
Great, thanks very much. Thanks very much. All right, I am getting word that we are ready to go over to our commentary team here for game number 2. Did we even do the draft?
No, sir.
Yeah, so we're not going over to the commentary team.
Wait a minute.
We haven't drafted too much.
We've been bamboozled, boys. I was like, all right then.
I was just like, okay.
We're ready to go over to the picks and bans.
Let's do it.
The one.
It seriously felt like the game was about to start.
Yeah, it did for me as well.
It was honestly your great hosting. That was really a lot.
That's got to be it. Let's just blame Caleb.
It's
a skill to be able to do that. He's stalling for days.
That's what I do. That's what I do. Do you remember the epic 3-hour fill at BlizzCon?
I do. I actually thought I was going to start it with Grubby. He was one of the poor victims of that. And I was like, Grubby, I'm glad I got you up here. An absolute veteran, not only within the world of esports, but just flat out Phil.
Yeah, just Phil. Just Phil. So in a moment, we'll get our picks and bans going, which will be nice and fun, to find out what is actually going to be picked here over on Tomb of the Spider Queen between these two. It's not going to happen yet, is it?
Till then, we just hang out and talk.
I'm
Magic
telling you.
happen.
All right.
Yeah.
I want to see Psalm on either Alarak or a Mage in this draft. That's what I want to see from Tempo Storm. I want to see them bring the fight to Liquid. I mentioned that a little bit before, and I don't necessarily think that's Tempo Storm's strength as a team, but Team Liquid, after that dominant first game performance, I just want to see Tempo be like, hey, guys, I'm sick of you running around the map pushing. Can we please team fight a little bit? And Alarak is one of those heroes that can really force the fight. Alternatively, Kael'thas is paired with an aggressive tank. If we can see Psalm on one of those two heroes, I'd be very happy this draft.
I was expecting that Tessadar ban. I say it has such a high priority on this map. This is what I'm curious about, though, is with the Nubrak being banned away specifically by Team Liquid themselves, is that a surefire indication or a knee-jerk reaction to say, Tempo, you need to pick up Stitches, otherwise it's guaranteed?
I don't know if I'd say it's knee-jerk. I think Liquid is definitely trying to kind of bait into that direction, but I don't know if it's an actual trap by any means. I would like to see Tempo move into that direction for sure. But this is, without a doubt, that with how predominant the Anubarak has been for Liquid, and this being one of the few Stitches priority maps, this by no means was a call out. It's suggesting, Tempo, do you stick to your Uther the same manner that you have into the past for Stitches, but instead...
That's way
I am so happy. Let's go, Tempo Storm. See, from my perspective, the Anubarak fan, I legitimately thought it was a Stitches bait so they could go into Uther and a late Stukov double support, and we could still potentially see that, but this is so unexpected.
Wait a minute, I've never seen someone so happy in their lives. This is insane. To put an Alarak at that higher priority, surely, I mean, in today's age of drafting, this is mental, no?
So I actually think this is really cool. Tempo Storm identified that they disrespected Team Liquid's strategy and them as a team in general. And now it's like the pendulum swung completely. Tempo's like, look, I want to bring the fight to you guys. I recognize, I really hope it wasn't a random Alarak, because then I would be so depressed.
I'm going to say that I don't think so, and alphabetically isn't the first hero, so I think you're good. We might have been able to avoid that.
To build upon my point, though, like I mentioned, Darkmok is a spectacular Alarak, and Tempo Storm and Liquid are... It's like a game of... It's mind games here, because Tempo's like, if we don't put an early prioritization on this Alarak so we can get the fights we want, then Liquid has the insight to say, look, someone plays this hero, we can play it too. We're probably going to be able to play it better, so prioritize something else, and let's get it on the back end of the draft. And I think it's a really cool adjustment. I don't know if it's an adjustment Tempo made, but I think it is. They went from disrespecting them to giving Liquid a lot of credit in the draft and saying, look, if we don't early pick Alarak, we're not going to be able to get the composition we want.
It has happened on this map for Team Liquid in the past. We've seen Darkmog like actually just pick it up and have good success with it in some instances. But back in, boys.
Okay. I'm going to guess this is